All right, so if you've stuck with me this long, thank you so much. We are at my favorite part of today's video, which is going to be specialty milk drinks on the Cadorna series of espresso machines. Now, from left to right, we've got a couple of different ways that these machines froth milk, but the standout here is going to be the Gaggia Cadorna Barista Plus. That is a machine with a full commercial steam wand, meaning that you will be the barista and responsible for texturing milk for your drinks. That's something that I'll cover and go over some basic tips to help you get started. The other two machines though, the Cadorna Milk and Cadorna Prestige, are what we call one-touch espresso machines. So that means that with the push of a button, you can actually produce a full specialty milk beverage from start to finish without moving your cup. Now, on the Cadorna Milk, we have a pickup tube with the Cappuccino style frother, and now Gaggia has actually upped the ante with something called the cap and cup system. So with the slide here, the milk will be directed straight into your cup. The Cadorna Prestige uses an auto frothing carafe. Now, there are a couple of advantages to something like that. Not only do you have the aesthetic touches of the included stainless steel accenting, but the handle makes it easier to lock in and out of the machine, and it has a nice magnetic arm that swings shut when you're done using it. And then on the Cadorna Prestige, we'll also be taking a closer look at the included hot water spout. So when you've removed the carafe from the machine, you can simply place that into the socket and use it to dispense water. It also kind of keeps the machine from being a bit of an eyesore with having that open socket exposed. So let's get into it. All right, so we're going to first start with the commercial style steam wand on the Cadorna Barista Plus. So before we actually froth milk, there are a couple of things to take note of. First is that if you are frothing for drinks, especially say if it's just one drink for yourself, you want to use the appropriate sized pitcher. So something like this, which is a 12-ounce frothing pitcher, and we carry a few sizes ranging from 10 to 12, which are good for this purpose. That's going to help you get what's called a good roll in your pitcher. So when you start frothing, the key objective is basically going to be to get the milk folding over itself so that the air gets incorporated. And if you have a smaller amount of milk, it's much easier to do that with a smaller pitcher. If you use something bigger like this, you could steam, but it's gonna be tough because ultimately it's harder to get that roll because there's just more space in here. But if you're frothing milk for, say, maybe one really big drink or a couple of drinks at a time, a bigger pitcher like this is going to be just fine. Now, there are a couple of other things to take note of. When you're filling the pitcher up, especially if you were going to, say, make like a 6-ounce drink or so, inside the pitcher, you have a crease where the spout is located. If you get about maybe a fingernail's width of distance between the top of your milk and the bottom of that crease, that should be good. And when you're frothing too, you can sometimes just dump a little bit of milk if you've got too much. So I can show you here, without tipping it too much, that's about how much milk I'm going to froth with for a drink of this size. Now, the first thing that I'll do though is actually before frothing, we'll brew our espresso, because what's going to happen is the boiler will get very, very hot. We'd have to purge some of that water out. So let's make our espresso first, and then we'll froth our milk. All right, and that shot is looking good. So we're actually almost ready to start steaming. But first, if we press the steam icon, you'll see that basically the screen is now just a start or stop. There's no kinds of programming that you can do for steaming. It's basically just a completely manual process. Now, it's good that I have an extra container here, because before we froth, the first thing that we're really going to want to do is purge any of the water that has condensed inside the steam circuit. So by pressing start or stop, you'll see the screen basically now say heating up, and it may take a few moments. It really depends. So if, say, you've just dispensed hot water and the boiler's a little hotter, this process might take a little shorter, so it's not always going to be the exact amount of time. But we'll see some water purge out of this wand first, and that's going to be really important because that keeps that from getting into your cup. And that rhythmic thunking is the telltale sign that you're at steam temperature. So got our water out, press stop. Now, when we go back in, we're going to try to position the tip of this wand near the surface of this milk. And you'll know that you've done that successfully when you hear a sort of tss, tss, tss sound, which is the air being injected into the milk. Now, we have a great video on our YouTube channel that AJ from our YouTube team put together that talks about his experiences learning how to froth milk with great advice, so I highly recommend that you check that out. Now, we'll press steam again, and you'll notice how much more quickly this is ready to go. Submerge the tip, and I'm going to have to try and maneuver this here so that I can show you what I'm doing, but also get a good roll here. And that tearing sound again is the air being injected into the milk. And so if you lower the pitcher, that means you're lowering the surface of the milk so that you can add more air. This is how you can create the difference, say, in your froth texture between something like a cappuccino, which is very, very foamy, and a latte, which is much more incorporated with more of a smooth, creamy texture. And so you can feel the pitcher getting hot. You typically want your milk to be around 140 degrees. And so what that does is it helps make sure that the milk can stay nice and smooth. So otherwise, if you let it get too hot, what's going to happen is that milk can basically rip the proteins apart and it won't hold its shape. Now, I'm going to actually show you the hot water function for a second. So if we press that, this is a good thing to do after you're done steaming because we can basically purge any of the extra hot water out of the boiler and get the wand rinsed as well. So that's great. And then I want to think that it goes without saying, but you should always wipe down your steam wand after you're done frothing. So if you see this milk looks actually really, really nice. I did a pretty good job for the kind of wonky angle that I'm working with here. But you don't want to have any big bubbles. You can always give it a couple of taps if you see some in there. And then basically if you're going to pour a latte, my advice is you sort of want to pour your base, which is basically meaning that we're pouring milk under our crema. And then I'm going to try for a rosetta here, and you're going to bear witness to my onion that we've got. So I have a feeling, though, that the texture and taste on this drink are probably going to be really good. And to be honest with you, with some practice, you should be able to get something much prettier than this after, a couple of tries. So that's frothing on the Cadorna Barista Plus. All right, so now that we've got our manual frothing accomplished, let's take a look at Easy Street. So we've got our Cadorna milk here, which uses the cap and cup frothing system. Now, something I want to show you is actually our cafe au lait today, and it's really cool because Gaggia has actually programmed these drinks to have different orders for the coffee and milk depending on the type of drink that you're making. So say something like a cappuccino versus a flat white is going to change up the order. Now, again, as I mentioned, this is what's called a one-touch drink. So once we get the drink selected, we'll brew at the defaults here for our cafe au lait, that it will simply start frothing automatically. Now, the cap and cup uses this pickup tube here. We've got, like I had mentioned before, a ½ liter or 17-ounce carafe. And I'll show you how you can store that in the fridge when we're all done. So let's go right on ahead and start this. Hear the coffee being ground. And there's our coffee. Now, something that's worth noting is that actually you can independently start and stop both halves of a milk drink. So say that we wanted a little bit less coffee, we could have stopped that section of the brewing process and proceeded straight onto milk frothing. So just something to keep in mind if you ever want to make small changes on the fly to your drinks. And we have our cascading cafe au lait in one touch. Now, we're being prompted if we want to do a milk quick clean. Basically, put a container under there and press start, and we'll have some water purged through this circuit here to clean out the milk slide. And then you can simply dispose of that. Now, when you're all done, say, with your frothing and you want to store things, say, in the refrigerator, first maybe get a towel and wipe things up. And what you can do is disconnect the hose from the cap and cup. Now, you'll notice on the top of your carafe here, there's this little post in the corner. And if you're wondering what that is, that's simply a post for the milk pickup tube. So once you've got that in there, wipe off any excess milk or water that has splashed on the top of the carafe, and then you can store this in the refrigerator for your next use. So say though that you are really into the Gaggia brand and the aesthetic, and you want something that might look a little bit nicer than the plastic. Gaggia does produce a full glass milk carafe with the markings along the side here, a post just like this one. It does come with a pickup tube and in a very attractive red and white Gaggia packaging. So, you know, I'm a big fan of that. I would definitely say if you're looking to maybe elevate the aesthetics just a bit, put one of these guys next to it and you're good to go. And that's a one-touch drink. Now, before we're done, let's cover too though, if we want to do hot water dispensing, that's going to come out of the milk system, or the milk system too. So we'll simply press hot water, and then if we start, you'll get water coming out of here and then just straight down the slide into whatever container you're using. This can be programmed, so similar to what we had seen on the Cadorna Barista Plus, you can program it and then have different profiles for different amounts of water. And if you notice too, you're actually able to dispense this water without the milk carafe hooked in. So you don't need the whole assembly in place in order to use this feature. And then as I mentioned, let's just do stop, and we've got all the water that we want. So for the last of the bunch, we have the Cadorna Prestige. Now, this is the most impressive in terms of its automatic frothing using the fully integrated one-touch carafe. Now, this takes the same general idea as the Cadorna Milk with a carafe full of milk, but the frothing assembly is actually contained within the top of it. So it's a one-piece unit that can be fully inserted and removed from the machine in one go. Now, there are a couple of things to keep note of when you're doing that. First of all, there's a little tab here, an indentation rather, at the bottom of the carafe that lines up with this tab on the machine. So when we're inserting the carafe, we want to make sure that this is fitted in here. The other is that at the end of the arm, there is also this little post that sticks out. You cannot lock in the carafe without the arm extended. So we'll do that, and with the arm in position, we'll simply line up the end here with the little tube that you can see right there, and then looking at the base, make sure that it's fitted in. Now the machine is ready to produce one-touch milk drinks. But before we do that, I also want to show the other accessory for this, which is the water spout. So simply do the same thing where you're lining up and push to lock in. And so basically, if you want to dispense hot water, simply go to, well, hot water. If we push this button, we'll get a little bit of hot water out of the machine. And now it's just nice. It goes straight down in the, spout. Really pretty basic, but if you want to dispense hot water with the machine, you do need to have this fitted in here. But again, because you can remove the entire carafe, store it in the fridge for later, this is something that you can put on the machine just to preserve the aesthetics. So that little sputter is just because the boiler may have some slightly flash boiled water, and then you'll see a more normal stream as just water continues to pump. So we'll press stop with that though. Now, the Cadorna Prestige is actually going to be the most robust in terms of its one-touch menu. Now, compared to the Cadorna Milk, there are some exclusive beverages to this machine that did not get included on the milk. So that's what that Prestige gets you. Starting on page 3 of our menu, we see the Caffè Cortado and the Flat White, the Latte Macchiato XL, and the Cappuccino XL. these 4 drinks are exclusive to the Cadorna Prestige. And you can thank the Cadorna Prestige actually for these extra tall spouts, because you're going to need really tall cups for these XL drinks. That's just a lot of milk. And for our other machines, they benefit from that as well. Now, let's go ahead and make a milk drink. And we're going to do the flat white because the Cadorna Prestige does things a little bit differently, but completely authentically. And of course, I'm coming in at an angle here, so my carafe work is maybe not as solid as yours will be. But we'll go to our flat white, and we can take a look, and if you notice, conspicuously, we are missing our scoop icon. That's because this drink is going to grind and brew the coffee twice. Now, one thing to make note of is that this number here, this 2.7 for instance, that's the total amount of coffee that's going to be dispensed. So it will split that up into 2 cycles. Let's make the math a little simpler for ourselves. So 2.97 will round up to 3. That means we're going to get about 1.5 ounces in each grind and brewed cycle. Go up to high because that's the temperature of my preference, and then we'll get our milk just up to 3 as well, just because I like that rounder number. And we'll go ahead and make our flat white. And there we have our flat white. It's a bit like a cappuccino that's brought a little bit of extra coffee to the party. Now, similar to our Cadorna milk, on our screen now we're being prompted for a quick clean. We'll press start. Oh, missed that. So actually, this is a great opportunity to look at some additional options that we have on both the Cadorna Prestige and the milk. So if we go into our cleaning menu, there are additional options for both quick milk clean, which is a quick purge, and deep milk clean. So quick milk clean is the one that I was not quite quick enough to get. So we'll do that right now. We press this, have our container, and we're just going to run some water through this spout. So that's great because ultimately that can get this cleaned out and ready for the next use. Now, I won't show the full deep milk clean because that's a more involved process, but this is where you would actually use a milk system cleaner like something like Ernex Rinza or one of their M61 milk cleaning tablets to actually clean the entire system. So something that you should be doing regularly just to make sure that you don't get any milk buildup inside the carafe. But otherwise, that's how you would make a milk drink using the one-touch frothing system on the Cadorna Prestige.